So today we are going to learn about how to start up creating a Spring Boot application. What are the different tools and what are the different sites that we may be requiring to actually start up creating an application. So let's understand what is required for my Spring Boot setup. So you can build tools that automates the creation of an executable applications from the source code. They compile the code, package the binaries, run the test, and create the installation packages. So basically, in your Spring Boot, you have the tools already created, which helps you to not only create your full-fledged Spring Boot application, but within that tool itself, you have the capability to run tests also on your Spring Boot application. Add the dependencies, the additional jar files that will be required for your Spring Boot application. So let's directly jump into it, and the tool that majorly we will be using here is known as your Maven tool. So Maven is a project management tool which will help us to not only manage the dependencies. What are dependencies? Dependencies are nothing but the libraries which we need to add in our project, which are my external libraries which are not pre-installed within my Java installation. Now these jar files I can add it manually also, but then I as a developer has to take care of the different version being changed. Every time I have to manually download and do the updations in my project, or we can hand over this responsibility to my Maven project management tool, wherein my Maven will take care that my dependencies are getting downloaded automatically. You can tell your Maven that there is a change in the version. Now you change the version of the library in the project also, Maven will take care of it. Not only that, Maven is a tool which will also help you to package your project in a form of a jar file or a war file which you can distribute to your different servers, to your production servers. It will also help you to run test cases on your project so that you can understand if there is any problem with the project, with the application that you have created. So what is a Maven? Maven is a very powerful build tool. Maven is a tool which basically automates the overall process of your Java project creation. It is a project management tool which manages the dependencies, the different jar files that you require in your project. It compiles your code, runs the test, and even create the jar file for your project, which you can distribute and actually deploy to your production servers. It has a very important file called as your POM file. So POM file, known as project object model file, it's an XML based file in which you will be applying all the configurations. You will have to mention the dependencies that to be added. You also have to mention in what form you want to package your code. You can give the versions to the packaging, like you have created a version for 1.1. You can change the version for the second time when you're deploying it. So that entire capability is available within your POM file. So POM file includes the details like your project dependencies, any your build plugins that are required. Like for the test cases, we do require a plugin to run my test cases. Project information like what is the name of the project, what is the version name of the project, on which version of my Java the project will be compiled on. These all things will be included in that. This file defines how the Maven should build your application. Now, what is exactly the problem with your Maven? I mean, what exactly is the problem without Maven? Like, I can create projects without Maven, but there are few issues that we need to tackle manually is the concern here. So you have to do manual dependency management. The developer must download and manage the libraries that are needed manually. If there is a version change, you will have to manually change the version. You cannot let anyone else handle it. The custom scripts are required. You will only have to write the script for testing your program. You will only have to write the scripts for packaging your program. Everything basic, give an idea. Everything has to be manually done by you as a developer. So at the end of the day, you are not concerning yourself just with the major part of your project creation, like the major logic building of what your project is supposed to do. You're also concerning yourself with the other things that are required for your project to run. So we are trying to reduce that workload on the developer with the help of Maven. We are saying as a developer, you just concentrate on what is the business logic that is required for the project. Rather, the part that is needed for deploying it, testing it, compiling it, let's hand it over to an external tool like a Maven tool. Inconsistent processes, because we don't get a proper environment in which my application is running. Sometimes it might be running in a different environment, sometimes it might be running in a different environment. Maven provides you a very consistent environment where every project can be executed. Let's move ahead. Now let's understand how are we going to create the project. So for creating the Spring Boot project, we have a tool created by the Spring company, Spring people only, that is known as Spring Initializer. So Spring Initializer is actually a web-based tool. So you can also go and access the Spring Initializer by going to the URL, that is your spring.io/start. In that, you can mention the name of the project, you can mention the name of the artifact, the version, the Java version that you want to utilize, what exactly is the Spring Boot version on which you're trying to create the project, these all things, plus the dependencies. If you have any dependencies which you already know at the start of the project, you can mention that also. So Spring Initializer is a tool for bootstrapping new Spring Boot projects. Your project setup allows you to create a startup project with all the necessary dependencies, and you can also customize in the sense the project type, what type of a project it is, the dependencies, the versions and everything you can customize it here. Not only that, if you're going to use some IDEs like your Eclipse IDEs in which you will be having a plugin called as STS, or your Visual Studio IDE in which also you get a plugin for your Spring Boot, in those also the request will first go when you're trying to create a new project in VS Code, or you're trying to create a new project in STS, the request actually goes to your Spring Initializer, that is your web-based portal, and from there the project is downloaded in the zip file and unpacked in your IDE. So that is a very common platform from where my Spring Boot projects are actually created. So it's be it any IDE. It's not your IDE which creates your Spring Boot project. It's always your Spring Initializer. So getting started with the Spring Initializer, so you need to visit this site called as spring.io/start. You need to configure all the details about the group, your artifact ID, your Spring Boot artifact ID, your Spring Boot. You need to also select the option related to what type of a project it is, whether you want to create a Maven based project or a Gradle based project. The language is going to be Java or Kotlin or Groovy. So there are different options also available in the programming language, and the different dependencies, like what exactly you need in the project. Like I want to create some database related project, so I need a JPA dependency. I want to create REST API based project, so I need data REST dependency. I want to add security in my project, I need to add my security dependency. So there are multiple dependencies which we can add it at the time of the project creation also, or later on also during the project creation you feel like a dependency has to be added, we can add it. There's no issue in that. So what are dependencies? Dependencies are the external libraries or the framework that you add that your app needs to work. So these are like my jar files which are already created by some other developers to help us in my project to get my things done. See, we as a developer, most of the things are created from the scratch. So we need to concentrate only on my current project. What exactly is the logic we need to write in my current project to get the things done? All the backend work like the database connectivity, the security implementation, for that already the library files are available in your Spring Boot. So we just need to add them in our project. That is what we are going to talk about here. Why are dependencies important? As I said, dependencies provides you with multiple features and functionalities without having to build everything yourself. How do I add the dependencies? You can use your Spring Initializer to select your dependencies you need and add them to your Spring Boot project and your Maven repository by simply copy pasting it. So you have a site called as Maven repository. You can directly go there, search for the dependency you want to add it in your project, copy paste the XML file from there into your project, and automatically will notice your Maven will start downloading that jar file within your project. Setting up your environment, your development environment. So for the development process, it's better that you have an IDE available within your system. So this is the most prominent choice that you can have. So choose between Eclipse or your STS. STS is actually an extended version of your Eclipse only. Extract your project. As I said, now in STS itself, the project is extracted. You can directly create the project, or what you can do is you can first create the project using your Spring Initializer. That Spring Initializer will download your entire project in a zip file. So in your IDE, what you can do is you can unzip your project to whatever location you want to subscribe, and then you can open that project. Then you can open that project in your IDE to do the execution. Now there are the folders that are part of your project because it's a framework. We say Spring Boot is a framework. So framework will come with its own set of a structure, its own set of a skeleton in a form of the folders and a file. And we have to follow that same structure, the same file format and everything. So in your Spring Boot projects, these are some of the folders that we need to concern ourselves with. So we have this src/main/java folder in which all the Java files will be added. So you can add sub packages, sub folders into it as per your project. So if your project is very big, so for every component of your project, you can add multiple packages within this particular folder. Then you have your src/main/resource. It will contain your configuration files like your application.properties file, your HTML files if there are to be included, like your static files. If you're working with templates like Thymeleaf and everything, for that also the HTML files will be added in your resource folder. Anything that you want to keep static, which we are not going to change during my project execution, some JavaScript files which are needed for some animation that you might want to add it in your project, or some CSS files, because if it is a web-based application you're creating in Spring Boot, MVC-based applications, you will have the view part also. So those static CSS files or static images, static audio files, your JavaScript files, those can also be included within your resource folder. Then you have your src/test/java. As I said, your Maven tool also allows you to test your project. So those test cases are nothing but some small methods, small functions which we'll be writing in a Java program only to test whether my project is working properly or not. So those test cases, those Java small programs that you need to test it, can be written in this particular folder. We also have your pom.xml file, which I've already discussed earlier. It's the most important file when we are talking about your Maven project management tool, which is going to contain the entire configuration information related to your project. Now, the main advantage, like we discussed in the last session also, is that in the Spring Boot, when we are creating a web application, we have an embedded server already present within our project. So we don't have to install, there's no need to actually install an external server. If you want an external server, that is also fine. You can do that. But there's no need, because within your Spring Boot project, there is an inbuilt server included. So that is my embedded Tomcat server. So your Spring Boot application includes a built-in Tomcat server, eliminating the need for a separate installation. Automatic startup, when you run your Spring Boot project, your Tomcat server automatically starts. So you don't have to tell your Tomcat server to start first. It will automatically start when you will start running your Spring Boot project. Simplified configuration, your Spring Boot handles the configuration of the Tomcat behind the scene, making the server management easier for developers. So I don't have to concern myself even with the configuration related to the server on which my project is running. Everything is taken care by your Spring Boot here. So in this presentation, what we have understood is how we are going to create a new Spring Boot project. So we have a tool called as Spring Initializer, which is a web-based portal from where we can download or bootstrap my entire Spring Boot project. Or we can also make use of your IDs like your STS or your VS Code, and directly from my Spring Initializers, my project will be downloaded within my ID, and then we can start doing the modifications in my project. So I hope this session was being helpful to you. Thank you. Hello everyone. So now we are going to see how we can start creating a Spring Boot project. So the default portal from where we can start creating of a Spring Boot project is your Spring Initializer portal, which we can access it from this URL. We can say here start.spring.io. So this will directly take me to my Spring Initializer. Now here we need to make few selections as to be what should be my project management tool. Here, since we are going to make use of Java programming language, we will use a Maven tail for managing my project. Also make the selection about the language. So here we are going to keep it default Java. What is the version name? So version number, use a stable version number. So there are only two stable versions currently visible to me. One is 3.3.3 and another one is 3.2.9. So I'll select here 3.3.3, which is the latest version. Provide the metadata related to your project, like what will be the group ID of your project. Now group ID is something which is going to remain common for all the projects of your company. So here I'm going to make use of my project, let's say com.itvedant. The artifact ID will be the name of the project because the group name will remain constant for all the projects, but artifact ID will remain unique for every project. So I'll say this is my first app. Same will be applied to my name also. Provide the description to your project. Provide the package name. So here you can change the package name, but it has taken a default package name, combining your group and your artifact ID. Specify the packaging, whether you wanted a jar file for the web application, you can specify the Word file. Specify the version of Java that you want using in your system. Like in my system, the version that is currently active is Java 21. So I'm going to select it as Java 21. I need to add some dependencies because I want to create a web application here. So I can add my dependencies. So I can click on this add dependencies. So for web application, we will need to add here Spring Web. So Spring Web may Tomcat server will be embedded within my project and it will be used for creating even my REST APIs. So I'll click on Spring Web and directly we will click on this generate button which will give me my zip file. I'll say save. I'll open my zip file and extract the files. Now I will go to my extracted files. So here you can see there is a special Maven tool available to us, that is your MVNW, that is your Maven wrapper, which can be used to execute your Spring Boot project. So on the go you can execute your Spring Boot project. You don't need to actually place it inside an IDE to run it. So here directly on my address bar I will go and type your CMD to start my command prompt on this working directory. So this is my working directory in which it will open up. And here the command which we need to type is mvnw spring boot spring-boot :run. So this will first download maybe for the first time all the dependencies file if they are not downloaded in your project, and then it will start my project. It will deploy my entire project in the Tomcat server. So here it is running my code. You can see your Spring project has been successfully started now. So it's deploying your entire project to the Tomcat server. So now your Tomcat server is on the port number 8080. If you want to confirm, you can go to your browser once again and there you can go to localhost. This is the error page. Now why this error page is coming? It's giving me an error saying that I'm not able to find the page which is to be presented in front of you. So your Tomcat is working fine, but it is not able to show you the page, which you will see later on when we are going to work with the MVC project, how we can set it up. I hope the session was being helpful to you. Thank you. Hello everyone. So we have seen in the last example how we can create our project, Spring Boot project using Spring Initializer. But therein we have to manually do all the settings and then download the project, unzip it, and if I want to make any changes in my project, I can definitely open that project in my IDE. But what if I want everything to be done within my IDE itself, like project creation, all the setting of everything within my IDE itself. So we have two options available here. So we can go to my development tools, that is part of your project tab here. So we can go to this option called as Spring Tool 4, and here what we can do is we can see here there are two options. So we can add my Spring Tool 4s in my Visual Studio Code, which is one of the popular IDE which we can use for project creation, or you can also download the STS for your Eclipse. So let's first see the STS related to Eclipse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. Since my operating system is Windows operating system, I'm going to download it for Windows. So it's going to be a different variation of your Eclipse only that will be downloaded here. So Eclipse preloaded with the Spring Boot support. So STS is nothing but your Eclipse that is preloaded with the Spring Boot tool. So let it be downloaded. Zip this file. Unzipped, you can go to that location and downloads. You can see here Spring Tool Suite 4. You can directly execute it. So it's actually your Eclipse IDE only with packed features for your Spring Boot. Now you can see that my startup is completed. It's asking me for the workspace creation. So you can specify the folder name where you want all your projects to go. So let's keep this as a default workspace and we'll click on launch. Now here we can say that I want a Spring startup project. So we can directly go and start creating a Spring startup project. So see here, it's also taking me to my start.spring.io. You can specify the name of the project. Now I can start running it. You don't have to type any manual command. It will be automatically started here now. Let's also try out using your Spring Boot using your Visual Studio Code. So for Visual Studio Code directly, we can go to our VS Code and install the extensions. Now in VS Code, first you need to make sure that your Java extension is installed and your Spring Boot, both the extensions should be installed. So for that, what you can do is, you can go to your extension tab, search for Java extension first. The extension pack for Java, first you install this because all your files will be getting compiled under Java. Also, you need to install Spring Boot extension package. So you can see Spring Boot. Extension pack, which in build will have these three packages, that is your Spring Initializer, your Spring Boot tools, and also your Spring Boot dashboard. So we just need to install this entire extension pack. So now the installation is completed. We can start creating new Spring Boot project. So for that, we can go to our command palette. So we can press the shortcut key Ctrl plus Shift plus 3, or you can go to View tab and can select your command palette. And in this, you will have to say that you want to create your new Spring Boot project. So under Spring Initializer, you have this option called as Create a Maven project. So we will select a Maven project. So it will ask you what is your Spring Boot version. So step by step your Visual Studio Code is going to ask you. So I want to select this latest version, which is stable. Java as a programming language. What I want to keep here is my group ID. So I would say com.itvedant. What should be my project name or artifact name? I would say this is my first VS app. Packaging type, I will keep it as jar. Java version which is currently installed in my system is 21, so I'll select it as 21. Any dependencies, so Spring Web dependency, I do want to add it here. So once done with it, it will download. It will ask me for the location where I want to save my project. So I would say I want to save my project here, maybe in a location. I would select D drive or C drive, create a new project. So it is going to download the zip file, zip package for you. And then it is unzipping, and you can say now you open your project here. So in your VS Code, your project will be opening up. You have your form.xml file. In your SRC, you have your main file also created. You run your project. You will have to have your Spring Boot dashboard. Let's wait for it to be loaded here first. So here we have the Spring Boot dashboard activated. It's loading my application. So just wait a minute. So once my project is loaded, we can select our project and we can start running our project. That's how you can incorporate your Spring Boot within your Visual Studio Code also. I hope this session was very helpful to you. Thank you everyone.